my mother, when, she got separated from my dad and had 6 daughters, and she had to support us. And the way that she supported us is by renting rooms in the house, but more than anything, to have like a pension. A pension is something where people would come to your house for lunch or for dinner. And so what I have really good memories of my mother, well, it was hard for her, cooking for as many as 30 people every day.
My mother was not a spectacular cook, but at times she could turn it on. And it would come out that I remember a friend of mine used to call them state occasions in our house. There would be birthdays, religious holidays, Thanksgiving, the food was special then. Thanksgiving we had turkey and the standard set of trimmings, but a lot of the other times we didn't. And I get into, with essentially my mother-in-law, who'll talk about such and such being Jewish food, because I didn't grow up with that Jewish food, because the foods we had, my mother learned, I don't know from where, how to cook German food from my father at special occasions. So we would have sauerbraten, which is a marinated pot roast kind of thing, soaked in a brine for a long time. And actually, I used to like it. And sauerbraten and spätzle, which is a South German noodle dumpling kind of thing, which I still make that. It's not real good for you. You slather with butter and salt. It's amazing.
And she would have people that would come for lunch, let's see, at 12 o'clock or another group at 1 o'clock. And so she would cook for them from the soup, the entree, the dessert. So, I remember my mother working very hard from 6 o'clock in the morning until later, because she was always having to tend for other people that would come to our house for lunch or dinner. But the thing is that she was such an amazing cook that the people that would come, they would feel it's a special slot that they would have, because my mother only took a certain number of people that would come.
My mother's family came from a long line of people involved in the food industry in Europe and in America. They were farmers in Europe, which was unusual for Jews, but they're from Austria-Hungary, so they could own land. And her father owned a specialty grocery store, and other members of the family in the butter and egg business. And on my father's family, his grandfather was a poultry merchant, and there were others in that field. So it was around, but my father was an engineer, and that was not his thing at all. In fact, he could only really cook pancakes.
A pupusa is a bad description would be like a stuffed pancake, where a thick stuffed pancake that would have grinded pork, probably meat, with vegetables, and then you eat it it's the size of a tortilla, more or less, and you eat it kind of fried. It's almost fried, but it's made to taste depending on what the tastes are. And it's called pupusas mixta, that's the mixed one. You have pork, vegetables, and then you have marinated cabbage that you combine it with. And the marinated cabbage also comes with the sauce. The sauce you can, depending on your taste, can be very spicy, and sometimes not spicy. I personally don't like it spicy. In fact, I've had my Latino credentials questioned because I don't like spicy stuff. So
it is crazy, but I think that oceanic fish, so like 99% of the available fisheries in the world, is not so tasty like Mediterranean fish. There is a reason for that. The Mediterranean is saltier, so by that extent, probably the salts involved.
Example, the horse and camels, yaks, sheep, and goats. That's the main domestic animals. That's the house that people use for food. The important food I mentioned about milk and meat. The meat is mostly. We in countryside we don't have much vegetable, of course, not much. Some part is very good for agriculture, but it's not most of the place. That's why it's a little bit too vegetable, but eat a lot of the meat in the especially. But luckily the Mongolia is the steppe is very like wildish and virgin and wonderful organic herbs. We call maybe it's more than 600 different the mythical herbs in the steppe, and all cattle eat that. That's why we don't need to put some sauce or some special thing to the meat, because they have already got the grass, like eat everything from naturally.
So fish for me is goes with the remembrance of infancy, the summers, the long summers. It's always a coast sea proposition where I come from originally, so that's there. However, my mother was also an immigrant, so she was of mixed Greek and German origin. So we had so she carried to Greece, because she emigrated, in the 60s to Greece. She carried some of her own cultural baggage from the country she came from, and so there were some interludes of non-Mediterranean food. But yes, the most important part was fish, all forms of fish.
And there's one thing in particular also that to me, it just reminds me of my early childhood and just my roots, my native land. The smell of pupusas. The very unique smell, that mixture of that corn with the stuff with the pork and with the vegetables, and the smell of tortilla. Even today, when we go someplace like Salvadoran restaurant or something, my wife always looks at me as I get my food, because she knows that I will do something that I do all the time, which is I get a tortilla and I immediately cut it in half, like fold it, bend it in half, so then I can smell the smell that it has, right? The aroma, and it just penetrates me, reminds me of my childhood.